All right. Hey, folks. Hello. Welcome to this episode of the REBT Advocates with Dr. Michael R. Edelstein of 3minutetherapy.com fame and me, Tommy Bateman, famous internationally for stealing your girl. On this episode, we wanted to talk about empathy and how it's used in REBT and counseling in general. Of course, empathy is very important in the counseling profession, or so they say. Michael, what's been your experience?
Thanks, Tommy, for the introduction. And I just wanted to add to that I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein. I have 40 years experience helping people with life's challenges. I use REBT, as does Tommy, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. And you can find out more about my practice and my book, 3-Minute Therapy, in the description below. So I thought we would start, Tommy, by defining empathy. And so there are a few words and concepts that are similar to empathy, so we can distinguish between empathy and some of the others. So the one I wanted to distinguish empathy from was sympathy. And when you're sympathetic, let's suppose someone broke their leg. So sympathy would be that you feel sorry about their state, that they broke their leg. Whereas empathy would be you experience, in some sense, what you think they're experiencing emotionally when they broke their leg.
Yeah.
So that's normally what we're talking about in terms of empathy. And Tommy, you wanted to distinguish empathy from compassion, which I think is another important difference.
Yeah. I'll come back to that one later. First, and this is me, and I think Michael and I may butt heads on this. I'm not a fan of the use of empathy in the counseling session. Maybe Michael agrees with me here, but when you feel the feelings of the client you're feeling, then you're both feeling an irrational feeling, right? Because it's based on an irrational thought, as REBT postulates. I don't recommend it, especially for the practitioner, because it tends to cloud the judgment and be able to discern between rational and irrational emotions. And in the end, is unnecessary for the healing process anyway for the client. I can be a perfectly emotionalist sociopath and implement REBT. And help a client because I help them identify their irrational thinking, which leads to those unhealthy emotions, correct? Michael, where did I go wrong?
Yeah, well, I have a similar and somewhat different view. I have a similar view that if the client comes in depressed and you get yourself depressed somehow, then that's going to be useful. I don't think it is. So I agree with you there. The difference I have, and by the way, another way I agree with you is that you can get help from a book on REBT, and Albert Ellis has written over 80 books on REBT, and he's the founder of this approach. You can get help from a book, and I think empathy is just something a human can feel, not so much a book. So that shows that empathy is not necessary. But I think we part company, Tommy, because I do think it is desirable in some situations. And I think it helps a therapist in helping the client do the 3-minute exercise, A, B, C, D, E, F, which pretty much diagnoses your problem and then gives you a new perspective on it. In helping the client identify those different points, A, B, C, D, E, or F, if they're having difficulty doing it. So just to try to make my case a little stronger, let's just go with B. B is your irrational belief. Your client is trying to find their irrational belief, and they're having difficulty. Now, what you could do, what I do, is I think back to when I felt that way, when I felt depressed, angry, anxious, guilty, procrastinated, or acted addictively. And since I have an imperfect brain, I've done all those things in my long life. And so I tried to empathize. What was I telling myself when I felt that way? And then if I identify that, I'll suggest it to a client, and often that would be helpful. So I think that would help the RBT therapist in that way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and I think having an understanding of emotions and where they come from, and generally having that experiencing those emotions, is very, very helpful. So I don't necessarily disagree with you because I think in practice we'll end up doing the same exact thing because my alternative is compassion. Is there anything you wanted to a point you wanted to make before I go on to that topic?
Oh, yeah. And I think that although having empathy for your client is most helpful with helping them identify B, you can do it with each of those items. And also E, effective new philosophy, it could be very helpful because you can get in touch with what you're thinking when you're not upset in a similar situation. And that could be some ease or effective new thinking for the client.
Mhm.
Um, so that's why I think empathy is useful in this REBT sense. Now, there's another sense that therapists use empathy, and that is trying to feel what the client is feeling,
Mhm.
but in one way or another saying, I feel your pain, and not going further than that. So I don't think that's very helpful at all. I think that's could be unhelpful in reinforcing the validity of what the client is telling themselves or feeling.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's commonly trained, especially in my field. And I've mentioned my graduate school experience many times where we start off with Rogerian, and empathy is kind of big in Rogerian therapy, that person-centered therapy. We've done an episode on it in the past, and really having that empathy. And so sometimes you're in the room with them, and you're just, and I've done it with them. It's just caught in the muck, and you're feeling it. It's hitting your heart, and you're feeling those physical sensations that you're and you're experiencing it with them, and it's exhausting. It's no wonder that many trauma therapists or people focused on those type of experiences burn out within 5 years when they employ these type of tactics. So as a counselor, I don't recommend doing it that sub-therapeutic way at all. What Michael mentions is something I'm pretty in line with, but I like to use the term compassion, which is more of a sympathetic concern for a person's condition. That way, I'm not necessarily feeling what they're feeling, and I'm not even necessarily going back in time and uh, 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 reliving it so that I can figure out what the thinking I was having at the time to help narrow down their focus. I prefer to have a deep concern for what they're going through so that I can more effectively employ the REBT tactics that I've learned, such as starting with the C, which is sadness, anger, whatever it is, and then going to the typical thinkings, let's say the three major musts. So anger is usually caused by major must number two, and I narrow it down from there. But using my sympathetic concern to really hone in on that client's particular needs.
Okay, that sounds great. I had nothing more to add. How about you, Tommy?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so I'd like to thank you for watching another episode of the REBT Advocates. We have over 100 now. This might be 105, I think. And also suggest subjects. Many of the subjects we discuss are from viewers, and volunteer if you would like to be on our program and discuss a problem, or if you're a therapist and you'd like help with a client, we'll be happy to discuss that with you on one of our episodes. And ask any questions you might have also below. Support us on Patreon, give us a like, and subscribe to the REBT Advocates to stay on the rational side of life.